Hello and welcome to the Move Your Business Forward podcast. These talks are hosted by Boll, founder of Evoke Management and CEO of International Leaders UK. We'll be talking with experts from both these companies about issues that affect SME companies today.
Welcome to this episode of the Move Your Business Forward podcast. I'm joined here today by Fraser Duncumb from Wotter. Fraser is an industry expert within International Leaders UK, organisation I run. And Fraser, in my opinion, is one of the go-to people for talking about employee engagement. So Fraser, great to have you with me today to talk about this topic of employee engagement.
Thank you. Yeah, very kind. Very kind. Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
So I just want to jump straight into a few things here, Fraser, and just get your thoughts. So employee engagement is a big topic. I think many SME companies that we both work with struggle with engagement and often struggle with what to do about it and improving engagement, most importantly. I think the first thing is, how does anyone tell that they've nailed it or they've not got level of employee engagement right? Yeah, what are the telltale signs in your opinion?
Yeah, interesting one. I started by defining what I sort of mean by employee engagement, and I consider employee engagement to be the intrinsic motivation of an employee or workforce, depending on which one you're talking about. So what I mean by that is their kind of desire to go and do things for your company because it makes them feel good, because they care about the company, because they get up in the morning and think, hey, I'm going to make a difference today. I'm going to have a sort of sense of purpose. And that's compared to extrinsic motivation, which is sort of traditional way of looking at work, being I'll give you this money if you go do that thing for me, which is a pretty good motivator if you want people to say yes, I will go and do it. But it's not a very good motivator if you make them say, yeah, I'll go do that, and what else can I do? And how can I do it better? And that's the sort of crucial thing here. So what does that look like in a company? I think the big telltale signs that a lot of people talk about are company politics. Obviously, that can be sort of problematic. You end up with silos, departments kind of having an us and them mentality that they don't want to sort of share and collaborate. I've seen that firsthand in companies where this is actually like you could count up the hours of wasted time that this was costing the company, and this was a very low margin company as well. So those hours were very, very important. You then kind of look into other sides, whether you have embracing of change, for example. I speak to a lot of business leaders who talk about the frustration of kind of creating organizational change, and that there's the old 3,333 rule. I don't know if you come across it, that you spend 3 months discussing some change that you're going to make, which leads to 3 days of talking to managers about what you're going to do, which leads to 3 hours of talking to employees about what the change is going to mean, which leads to 3 years of them rebelling against the change and not liking it at all. And this comes up over and over again, that you try and make these changes and nothing happens. And yet, if you have a culture that embraces change and embraces those elements of work more, then that all sort of feels smooth. So I suppose what I'm trying to say here is that if you have a culture that isn't right, running your business feels like kind of like always walking through the mud, like always trying to push, like, oh guys, can we just do this? Like, I've mentioned this before, we need to do this, we need to fix this, we need to do this better. Those guys over there are doing it better, we need to catch up. You constantly feel like you're pushing against the kind of tide. But if you have a culture that really loves things, then it's as easy as walking in the morning and going, hey guys, those guys are doing this thing so much better, like I think we could do that. Who's got ideas? Like, how can we make this happen? And it becomes a much more free flow and forward thinking.
And I think the challenge a lot of companies have that I see is it's not obvious to everyone at different levels in the organization where they are in this all the things you've described. I think you could be at the lower end of a business in terms of where your role is and what you do, and be aware that it's a very political culture, or you've potentially got bad team players or people that aren't particularly motivated, and you probably get that up to a certain level, and then people start having different perspective on things, and you have people that are running companies that are just so removed from reality, or they're just blinkering it out or blocking it out. And I think that's a big thing, isn't it? How do you have a almost impartial view about realistically how much engagement you have, and possibly how much negativity you might have in terms of the firm not being able to progress because you haven't got that level of engagement that's positive and progressive? What would be the telltale signs if you're listening to this, if you're running a business and you think, yeah, it's all good, what would be the things that you might think are the obvious ones that you kind of haven't picked up on?
Yeah, I mean, they come from the kind of intangible all the way through to the very tangible ones. I mean, I was talking to someone yesterday who was saying that they'd walked into a number of companies in the local area doing similar companies. These companies were sort of competitors of each other, and yet he said, the second you walked in the lobby, you could get a suggestion of whether they were doing well or not by how people hung their heads and whether they were friendly and inviting, and so that kind of culture is an interesting one, but that's very difficult as a business leader to assess yourself, because the problem is if you go up to someone in your company and say, how's it going, they say, oh yes, everything's great, really really grateful to work here, brilliant, thanks so much, and then they hand in their notice the following week because they just flat out lied to your face. It's not worth the the honesty and the conflict that brings. And so either you need to find someone that you kind of trust who has a different perspective of yours, and ask them how it's going in that sense, or use a multitude of tools that are available that provide hard data on this. I'm a big believer that when you're making big decisions, and ultimately for most companies salary is one of the biggest items on the the P&L, this is something that should be data led. That you should be collecting this information. You should be saying, hey, here's a problem, let's go that way. But there's also the other side of things, as I sort of mentioned, with regards to coming up against obstacles with change and that sort of thing. And I think if you're finding that you're kind of getting pushback on sort of new ideas, then that's probably quite a telltale sign that either your ideas aren't very good, but you're probably not you probably haven't got to where you've got to if that's not the case. But probably more likely is that you've got kind of deep rooted kind of reticence or trust issues or various other problems within your culture.
And I think that the other obvious things are companies struggling to retain and keep staff, or when you're trying to grow the team, if you haven't got members of your team actively recommending people to join, that's a sign that you've
your cheapest recruitment consultants you can find, right? Your own staff.
And if you've got staff members that aren't willing to bring people in or suggest people to come in, that's an obvious sign, isn't there? I think that's on top of the list. So the numbers I like, because I'm a accountant.
Oh dear.
By originally, although I'm probably not as good as accountant as I used to be now because I don't do so much of it. But numbers is the key thing. So whenever I'm talking to a business, having numbers that back up decisions or give clarity is so important. And I think what you've managed to do with Wotter is give an easy to understand dashboard of your level of engagement that you've got, and also highlight where there are issues to almost help you get in front of issues that are going to develop into people leaving or things escalating. So I think your approach to this is really good, and I think you've also come from it as almost a new generation of this is what the importance is, which I think some of the engagement tools or feedback surveys that might be done on an annual basis are behind the curve in terms of this has got to be more real time. Things are changing so quickly. You have to have relevant, up-to-date info that you can then make some decisions on. So I guess what that pushes me into wanting to talk about is, from your experience, top tips that you would give to anyone running a business, either newly promoted into a management role or someone that's a founder of a business that is still on their journey of progression, whether it's going for more growth or planning for succession exit at some point, whatever it is. These are the people that I generally talk to. What would be your top 5 tips to say, right, people and engagement, what are the 5 things you would suggest they do and start to address?
Yeah, great. I mean, I don't know if I've got 5, but I'll start at 1 and see where we end up. I mean, the first one, I appreciate, you're mentioning about our platform there. I do think this is important, obviously, otherwise I probably wouldn't be running it. But the really important thing here, I think, more than anything, is to ask, what people are actually thinking, and then to actually listen. And these are kind of 2 different things where that first one often happens, the second one doesn't often happen. I think it's important to kind of involve people in that idea. And I think if you're asking only once, if you're asking not at all, you need to start asking ASAP. And if that's once a year, fine, that's a good start. If you're already asking once a year, I think you need to be looking seriously at asking a bit more regularly. For example, you wouldn't if you in your sales team, if your feedback cycle on a new approach was 1 year, if it took you a year to find out whether this thing that you were doing was working, you just wouldn't accept that within your sales team. So I don't know why we're accepting that when it comes to our employees. As you say, I think we need live data so that we can get this immediate feedback that, hey, we're doing this thing and this is the result, and that is how you push cultures in the sort of right direction. So absolutely, the first thing is, ask and listen. You can do that in person, although I warn people against the idea that I mentioned earlier about CEOs or senior leadership people going and asking people, they have ulterior motives, and most people avoid conflict, so they probably won't tell you the truth. I do think having an anonymous way that people feel safe to say whatever they like, that takes away that fear of conflict. That's important. The second one is something Paul Devoy at Investors and People talks about a lot. The Chartered Management Institute reckons that 66% of managers in the UK are what they call accidental managers. They're people who have done well in a job and then been promoted, and all of a sudden now, hey, well done, you're a manager. And the issue with this, and this is even people who've sort of left jobs and then bounced around management jobs. The problem here is that management is one of the hardest skills in business. And as time has gone on, we've asked our managers to do more and more. They're not only kind of doing the kind of, I suppose, bean counting element of, here's how we hit targets and let's make sure we're doing it. They're also now like personal confidants, they're hiring managers, they're everything else, in it. And if people are untrained in how to handle feedback, for example, or even how to give feedback, those are skills which people provide, have to lesser or greater degrees. And there are people who are natural at this, and there are people who are less natural at this. But I think a lot of things can be trained. And so getting training for your kind of management layers, I think, is vital. And even point 3, I'd say, always have a mentor. Always have someone that you can go to and gives you an extra perspective. Because if you think of social media is famous for creating sort of echo chambers, that if you surround yourself with people who all have the same ideas as you, then you very quickly believe that the rest of the world has those ideas because it's all you ever see. And the way that we really achieve things is to push and get new ideas, focus on those new ideas and push those. So I think that's certainly 3 to start with.
I think
train your managers, get your mentor.
The mentor thing's interesting as well, because I think it could be a mentor, it could be just access to other people in a peer-to-peer environment where you're actually listening to others and thinking, hang on a minute, this sounds different to what we're doing. Or it might even,
if only you knew a group that we could do that in.
Well, that's it. Well, International Leaders UK, there it is. But the point there is, it would also potentially give you comfort that you're doing the things you should be doing as well, because I think that's the big thing. I think a lot of people in leadership roles worry that, are we doing enough? What else could we be doing? And sometimes in that drive for perfection, enough, there's a level where actually that is enough. And okay, we might need to readdress this in 3 months' time, or if these things start happening, we need to address this. But we've done enough, we're doing good stuff, let's park that and focus on some other things, because that list of things to do and improve on is ever growing. And particularly when it comes to people engagement and all the stuff we've just been talking about, if you've got it to a point that's not necessarily perfection, but it's as good as it's going to get for the resource and the time and effort, relax and say, right, we're doing what we can, let's focus on some other stuff. I think having access to other people that can give advice and support is hugely important. Cool. Well, look, there's some great stuff there, and I think some really valuable things for people to think about on those three areas. In terms of your experience and what you're seeing at the moment and trends, we're talking now Q3 of 2023, and already a huge amount has happened this year, and we continue to be in a period of uncertainty, and lots of things in the press at the moment around some big organizations putting down rules about how often they want people to be in the office and various other things. I think the London office space environment is pretty hot at the moment, as more people want to get people back into their offices. They need more space, and also need to reconfigure space to make it more appropriate for potentially having more people than you've got desks for. So what else can you do with that space? So I think there's lots of things still happening and moving. Where do you see the trends over the next kind of 6 to 12 months going?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've seen since COVID is the kind of rise again of the HR department. I think, at one point, personnel was a really kind of respected part in the in the company, and over time, as more sort of external and compliance pressures got placed on HR was seen increasingly as a sort of cost center of hire these people for me and don't let tribunals happen, was the kind of traditional way of looking at it. And so the name of the game was understaff, keep costs as minimal as possible, make sure nothing goes wrong. But what we've seen during COVID, because all of a sudden this word furlough came out of nowhere and everyone had to call their HR managers, is we've seen this trend. And I think more and more people are empowering their HR departments. One of the big turns that I see companies making is, it seems like a minor thing, but they rename their HR department to the people team or the people department. And this is such as like a small thing, but I think when you stop seeing the kind of facilitative side of human resources and start seeing, oh, actually, I have a load of people who work for me who are, involved in my day to day. And actually, just imagine for a second that all of them left. You literally would have nothing. You might have an office building. You wouldn't have anyone to put it in. So I think this trend, this sort of awakening to what it means to have people in your team is happening, and I think it's happening from two ends. One, it's happening because people are seeing the advantages. Gallup constantly bring out their state of the workplace reports every year. They're absolutely brilliant, and they've established over and over again that companies that engage their staff better, that have a people-centric, they outperform their colleagues their competitors by vast amounts. This was established in the early 90s by Harvard Business Review as well, and is a trend that has only got sort of faster in the modern era. And so companies are waking up to it on that side. And the second thing is that the generations are changing and sort of coming through. And over the last 10 years, we've seen most of the baby boomer kind of generation is retiring now, and so we've got a much lower group of that sort of cohort, and we've got the Zoomers or Gen Z, whatever you want to call them, coming through underneath and adding to the kind of tech-heavy kind of view. These people have grown up with technology. They have grown up with fast technological solutions to the problems that they face. And as a result, they have come with an expectation that most problems can be solved in that way. Now, there's a sort of harsh truth to them that some things cannot be solved this way, but actually quite a few things can. If you're just willing to go and look at what the sort of latest technology is there. For example, oh my gosh, we can't meet in the office for meetings anymore. What are we going to do? Oh look, what's this thing we're using now? Zoom. There's a technological sort of solution to most business problems, and the ones that there aren't, they're being worked on very, very quickly. And so the generations are pushing for it, and people are also seeing the importance of it more and more, I think, at the top.
Yeah, no, great. No, that's really helpful. Thank you, Fraser. So really enjoyed talking about these things, and this is just a glimpse into this topic, which is really which is huge and is a moving thing as well. I think it's something that and people need to be constantly thinking, are they are they doing the right things here? And I'd encourage them to have a chat with you, or some of the things that I am advising companies on as well. So yeah, reach out and have a conversation. Just to finish off, any last final
do reach out on LinkedIn, however you want to. That's the best place.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Fraser. So just to wrap up, one final tip: if anyone's listening to this and if they were just going to do one thing, what would you encourage them to do?
Go and thank someone. Walk into the office, find someone who's done something good. Doesn't even have to be spectacular, just something good that you're really glad that they did. Walk up to them and thank them sincerely in front of everyone. Say, thank you so much for doing that. It was a really great piece of work. I'm really glad you did it, and I'm really glad you're here. Cool. It'll work wonders. Yeah. And then keep doing it. Do it once a week, if not more.
Cool. Great. Well, on that note, Fraser, thank you. I'm really grateful for your contribution today in this. Thanks. And hopefully this has been useful to someone that's listening to this. So Fraser, we'll talk again, and perhaps we can carry on this conversation at some point on another one of these. But yeah, thank you, Fraser. Thanks.
Sounds brilliant.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like more information about the topics discussed in this podcast, then you can find us on our website at moveyourbusinessforward.com.